You won't believe what happened to me. Imagine waking up one morning realizing your entire world is about to change forever and the person responsible? Someone who never even saw it coming. Someone who holds power, wealth, and influence, but has no idea that a single night could turn his entire life upside down. And now? He knows. His reaction? Oh, trust me, you'll want to see this for yourself. Because this isn't just some random story. This could happen to anyone. It could happen to you. But before we get there, let me ask you something. Have you ever made a decision that seemed insignificant at the time, but later became the defining moment of your life? Maybe it was a single message you sent, a night out you didn't plan, or a yes you never thought twice about. For me, that moment was the night I spent with my boss. A man who had everything: money, success, confidence, but there was one thing he didn't expect. Me. And what happened next? It changed everything. 9 months later, I was holding a tiny, innocent life in my hands, our child. A secret I had kept for so long. But the real shock came when he found out. His reaction? It wasn't what I expected. And I know you're here for that answer. So stick with me because I'm about to reveal everything, every detail, every emotion, every twist that even I didn't see coming. You might think you know how a story like this ends. Maybe you've seen it in movies or heard about it from someone else. But trust me, my story is nothing like that. Because when a powerful man discovers he's a father in the most unexpected way, you have no idea how he's going to react. Will he deny it? Walk away? Or will he step up in a way no one saw coming? That's what you're about to find out. And if you think you can guess what happens next, I promise you can't. Now, before we dive in, I want you to picture this. A man so used to control, so used to having his entire life planned out, suddenly faced with the one thing he never saw coming. A secret that could shake his entire world. And me? A woman who never planned for this, never expected this. But now I held the truth. And I had to decide when, where, and how to tell him. The moment I did, everything changed. And just wait until you hear his response. Because that, my friend, is the part that will leave you speechless. The night it all started wasn't anything extraordinary. At least, not at first. It wasn't some grand romantic setup or a carefully planned encounter. It just happened. It was one of those nights where the air felt heavier, where exhaustion mixed with something unspoken, where two people who never should have crossed that line found themselves teetering right on the edge of it. My boss, Alexander Carter, was the kind of man who commanded attention the second he walked into a room. He wasn't just wealthy, he was powerful, the kind of successful that made people stop and listen. Cold, calculated, always in control. And me? I was just another employee, another name on his payroll, another person he barely noticed beyond the work I did. Until that night. Until we were the last two people left in his penthouse suite after a long, grueling business trip, the lines between professionalism and something far more dangerous beginning to blur. It was a mistake, we both knew it. But it was also inevitable. One moment of weakness, one moment of honesty, and everything changed. But here's the thing about a man like Alexander, he doesn't do attachments. He doesn't do complications. And after that night, it was like nothing had happened. He went back to being his usual self-sharp, composed, untouchable. I was just another person in his world, expected to fall back into line, expected to pretend like that night was nothing more than a dream. And I tried. I really did. But life has a way of making sure you can't outrun the choices you make. Weeks passed, and something inside me shifted an unease that wouldn't leave, a feeling I couldn't shake. And then, the truth hit me like a train. I was pregnant, his child growing inside me, a secret that could shatter the walls he had so carefully built. Panic set in. Telling him wasn't an option. How could it be? I had seen the way he handled problems, the way he dismissed things that didn't fit neatly into his world. I convinced myself that he didn't need to know, that I could handle it alone. After all, What were the chances that a man like Alexander Carter would ever want this? He had everything: money, power, control. Why would he want a baby thrown into that mix? And so I disappeared from his orbit, quietly stepping away, blending into the background. I told myself it was the right thing to do, that he was better off not knowing, that I was better off not telling. But secrets have a way of catching up to you, especially when they're never meant to stay hidden forever. 9 months later, my life had completely transformed. Motherhood was nothing like I had expected. It was terrifying and beautiful all at once. My son, Noah, had his father's eyes, his father's intensity, and every time I looked at him, I was reminded of the man who had no idea he existed. But as much as I tried to create a life for us, there was always a shadow looming over me, the knowledge that one day, somehow, the truth would come out. And when it finally did, it wasn't on my terms. It wasn't carefully planned. It wasn't a conversation I had control over. No, it happened in the one way I never could have anticipated. The first time Alexander laid eyes on Noah, he didn't even know what he was looking at. It was a chance encounter, one of those cruel tricks the universe plays when it decides you've been hiding for too long. I was at a calf, exhausted, trying to balance a fussy baby in one arm while fumbling with my bag. And then, a voice. His voice. Deep. Unmistakable. "Let me help you with that." I froze, every muscle in my body locking into place. It had been over a year since I had last spoken to him, since I had last seen him. And now, here he was, standing inches away, completely unaware that his entire world was about to change. He reached for the bag I dropped, his fingers brushing mine for the briefest second, and then his gaze shifted, landed on the baby in my arms. And for the first time in his life, Alexander Carter looked utterly, completely lost. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken words, with realization crashing into him like a tidal wave. His brows furrowed, his sharp mind putting the pieces together in real time. The resemblance was impossible to ignore: the dark hair, the same piercing gaze, the unmistakable presence of himself reflected back at him in the eyes of a child he never knew existed. And in that moment, I saw something I never thought I'd see in him: uncertainty. Fear. For a man who always had the answers, who never let anything shake him, he suddenly looked like he had stepped into a reality he didn't know how to navigate. "What is this?" His voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it, a razor-sharp demand for the truth. My heart pounded so hard I thought he might hear it. Every exit strategy I had, every excuse, every way out I knew, none of it would work now. There was no running, no hiding. This was it. The moment I had spent months dreading, avoiding. And as I stood there, clutching Noah tighter against me, I realized that I had no idea what he was going to do next. Would he be angry? Would he walk away? Would he fight for something he never even knew he wanted? But here's the thing about Alexander Carter. He never reacts the way you expect him to. And what he did next? It left me absolutely speechless. Alexander didn't speak for what felt like an eternity, but I could see the storm raging behind his eyes. His entire body had gone rigid, his jaw clenched so tight it looked painful, and yet, beneath all of that, there was something else, something unreadable. He wasn't just shocked. He wasn't just angry. He was calculating, dissecting the situation in real time, trying to make sense of something that made no sense at all. I held my breath, gripping Noah a little tighter, waiting for the explosion, the accusations, the cold, detached dismissal I had prepared myself for. But what he did next? I never saw it coming. Without a word, he reached for my arm, not harshly, but firmly, with purpose. Before I could react, before I could form a single protest, he was leading me out of the calf, his grip unrelenting yet careful. I should have pulled away, should have demanded an explanation, but my feet moved on instinct, my mind spinning too fast to process. He guided me to a sleek black car waiting at the curb, opened the door, and without even glancing at me, ordered, "Get in." It wasn't a request. It was the voice of a man used to getting exactly what he wanted. A voice I had once been able to resist. But not today. Not when I knew resistance would only make things worse. The ride was suffocatingly silent. I sat stiffly, cradling Noah as he let out soft, sleepy murmurs, completely unaware of the tension thickening around him. Alexander sat beside me, his gaze fixed straight ahead, his hands steepled together as if holding himself back from saying something he wasn't ready to say. And then, finally, when the silence became unbearable, he spoke low, measured, dangerously calm. "How long were you planning on keeping this from me?" My throat tightened. There it was. The inevitable confrontation, the moment I had been running from. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know. It wasn't a lie. I had never had a solid plan. I had spent months convincing myself I was doing the right thing, that keeping my distance was the only option. But now, sitting here, under his piercing gaze, it felt like the weakest excuse in the world." He let out a breath, a slow, controlled exhale that sent a chill down my spine. "You don't know?" he echoed, his tone unreadable. And then, without warning, he turned to me, his sharp eyes locking onto mine. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" His voice was still quiet, but there was an underlying intensity to it. "You took my child and decided what? That I didn't deserve to know? That I wouldn't care? That I wouldn't fight?" The way he said that last word, fight, sent a jolt through me. I had expected anger, but this was something different. Something dangerous. He wasn't just upset. He wasn't just hurt. He was determined. And that scared me more than anything. The car pulled up to an all-too-familiar building, his penthouse. My stomach twisted. I had spent a single night in that place, a night that had changed everything. And now, I was being pulled back into a world I had desperately tried to escape. The driver opened the door, but I hesitated. "Alexander, I don't think get out." His voice was still low, but it carried the weight of finality. He wasn't giving me a choice. With a deep breath, I stepped out, clutching Noah close, my heart pounding. The moment we entered his penthouse, the memories hit me all at once. The sleek, modern decor, the intoxicating scent of leather and expensive cologne, the lingering ghost of the last time I had been here. Alexander didn't waste time. He removed his coat, loosened his tie, and turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "I want a paternity test." The words were sharp, cutting straight to the core. My stomach dropped, but I nodded. I had expected this. He was a man who thrived on proof, on certainty. He wouldn't just accept the truth, he needed to see it. "Fine," I said quietly. He didn't react, just studied me for a long moment before his gaze dropped to the baby in my arms. And for the first time since this nightmare began, something in his expression shifted. I had been so focused on him, on his reaction, that I hadn't noticed Noah staring right back at him. Wide, curious eyes, the same ones that mirrored his father's. The resemblance was undeniable, and for the first time, I saw it register in Alexander's mind. I saw the slight falter in his confidence, the way his breath hitched just slightly, as if reality had finally caught up to him. But then, just as quickly, he masked it. "You should get some rest," he said suddenly. It was so unexpected that I blinked. Rest? That was the last thing I could do right now. "You're staying here," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. My chest tightened. "No!" "Alexander, I can't." "You can. And you will." His gaze hardened. "Until the test results come back, I want you here. Both of you." His eyes flickered to Noah before returning to mine, his expression unwavering. "I'm not letting you disappear again." And just like that, the last bit of control I thought I had vanished. But what neither of us knew in that moment was that this was just the beginning. That there were secrets far bigger than the one I had been keeping. That forces beyond either of our control were already at play. And that the truth, the real truth, it was about to change everything. Because someone else already knew. And they were about to make sure that keeping this secret was the biggest mistake I had ever made. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of quiet murmuring. It took me a second to register where I was: the penthouse. Alexander's world. A place I had tried so hard to stay away from. My heart pounded as I sat up, my body instantly searching for Noah. And then I saw them. Alexander was standing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, dressed in his usual crisp suit, holding Noah carefully in his arms. The sight was so unnatural, so impossible that I nearly gasped. He looked out of place yet strangely at ease, his strong hands supporting the tiny frame of the child he hadn't known existed until yesterday. But what stopped me cold wasn't just the fact that he was holding our son, it was the look on his face. Something had shifted. The sharp businessman, the man who commanded boardrooms and owned skyscrapers, was gone. In his place stood a man staring at a child as if he had no idea how something so small could shake his entire foundation. He ran a careful finger over Noah's tiny fist, and for the first time, I saw a vulnerability in him I never thought possible. "I didn't sleep," Alexander said without turning around. His voice was quieter than usual, almost hoarse, like he had spent the entire night wrestling with something he couldn't control. I kept thinking, what if I had never found out? What if I had never run into you? He finally looked at me, and in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about shock anymore. This was something deeper, something raw. "Did you really think I wouldn't care?" His words weren't angry, just pained. And that hurt more than I expected. I swallowed hard, stepping closer, my chest tightening with everything I wanted to say but couldn't. "I thought you wouldn't want this," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "You don't do attachments, Alexander. You don't let people in. I didn't think you would be a father." He finished for me, and for the first time since all of this started, there was no hardness in his tone. Just understanding. Just regret. Maybe I wouldn't have been. Maybe if you told me back then, I would have pushed you away. Maybe I would have made the worst mistake of my life. He glanced down at Noah again, something unreadable flashing across his face. But now I know. And there's no going back. Something in the air shifted, and before I could respond, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text. I frowned, reaching for it, but the second I saw the message, my blood turned to ice. "You thought he was the only one who needed to know? Think again." My fingers trembled as I read the words over and over, my heart hammering against my ribs. No name. No number. Just a warning. A threat. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach, something dark and twisting. I looked up at Alexander, my breath catching. "We're not safe," I whispered. His expression darkened instantly, all softness vanishing as he took a step closer. "What are you talking about?" I handed him the phone, and the moment his eyes scanned the message, his entire body went rigid. "Who else knows?" His voice was controlled, but I could hear the barely restrained fury underneath. "Who did you tell?" "No one." My voice was shaking now. "I swear, Alexander, I never told anyone. But then it hit me. The job I left. The people who noticed my sudden disappearance. The way I quietly walked away from everything. Someone must have been watching. Someone had known all along. And now they were ready to use it against us." Alexander's jaw clenched, and for the first time I saw a different kind of fear in his eyes. Not for himself. Not even for me. But for Noah. His son. "Pack your things," he ordered, already reaching for his phone. "We're leaving." "Leaving?" I repeated, my mind barely able to catch up. "Where?" "Somewhere safe," he said, already dialing a number. "Somewhere they can't touch us." The next few hours were a blur. Bags packed. Security guards stationed. A black SUV waiting downstairs. I barely had time to process it before we were moving, driving out of the city, leaving behind the only life I had known. I sat in the back seat, holding Noah close, my heart racing as Alexander spoke quietly into his phone, giving orders, making arrangements. And for the first time, I realized just how much power he truly had. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a man who could disappear off the map if he wanted to. And now? He was taking us with him. But just when I thought we were safe, just when I let out the breath I had been holding, the car screeched to a stop. My heart lurched. The driver cursed under his breath. And then I saw black SUVs blocking the road ahead. Men in dark suits stepping out. Waiting. Alexander's entire body went tense, his hand already reaching for the door handle. "Stay here," he ordered. Panic surged through me. "Alexander, stay." "Here." His voice was final, his eyes locked onto mine. And then, before I could stop him, he was stepping out, walking straight toward the men who had been waiting for him. The air was thick with tension as I watched, my pulse pounding so hard I could barely think. One of the men stepped forward, his posture relaxed, but his presence anything but. And then, he spoke. "It took you long enough," he said, a smirk playing at his lips. "We've been waiting." And that was the moment I realized this wasn't about me. This wasn't about my secret. This was about him. About something far bigger than I had ever imagined. Because Alexander Carter wasn't just a powerful man. He was a man with enemies. And now? Now they had found his greatest weakness. Noah, our son. And suddenly I knew this wasn't just a fight for the truth anymore. This was a fight for survival.